Hello, everybody. This is Buddy, Midland, Texas. Just saw an interesting news story on my Facebook feed, and what it was showing here: DHS gave millions in contracts to firm where acting chief's wife works. Okay, and I did a short write up on the top where last year I provided DHS, Department of Homeland Security, evidence that I believe could solve multiple murders and stop this crime ring before showing them where I believe the tunnel was going at, coming from the Home Depot store, the Midland, Texas Home Depot store, to my home, and which was used for the 2010 oil show parties where an oil show girl, where a young girl was murdered when she refused to prostitute. That's the Permian Basin International Oil Show. It's a big convention for the oil field. Homeland Security Agent Paul surprised me when he rudely asked me why I wouldn't sell my home since my life had been threatened, and 2 weeks later the ground was dug up and concrete was poured right where I'd been with them, showing them where I believe that tunnel was at. I got this on video, and a few weeks later, U.S. Congressman Mike Conaway announced his retirement. Come to find out, his late brother-in-law used to live across the street from my home. 3 months later, Secretary of Homeland Security Kevin McAleenan resigned. 6 days later, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry resigned. Many people believe this was because they were involved in tampering with evidence in this capital murder, and the question had been asked if they could later be facing the death penalty for their involvement in that capital murder. And I think that's an interesting question to ask if the Secretary of Homeland and the Secretary of Energy could be pulled up on such serious charges. And so I think this deserves a legitimate investigation and to find out what's going on here. Okay, here were some of my comments. First of all, we can click on this link here. And DHS awarded $6 million in contracts to firm where Acting Secretary Wolf's wife is executive. And Homeland Security spokesman said Wolf was unaware of the contracts until contracted by the media. And this is an interesting story. It just come out in the news here. Consulting firm where the wife of Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf is an executive. And interesting, you'll see down here when you're reading that he got that job last November. And the reason was because McAleenan resigned, and that was 3 months after I had showed Homeland where I believed this human trafficking murder tunnel was at, and concrete was poured 2 weeks later. I'm going to show you the evidence on that. First of all, I made this video about an hour before I met with Homeland Security on May 28, 2019, and it shows the evidence book that I gave them. And that was just a proof video that I made before I went to the Midland Police Department to meet with Homeland Security Agent. And this is a really amazing video. You're going to see there's evidence on multiple murders in there. It's just packed. It's a 3-ring binder. There was a flash drive along with it. And so... And then on July 2nd, that was May 28th, on July 2nd, I was contacted by Homeland Security. They wanted to meet me at the Home Depot store. First, they were going to come here, and then they changed their mind and wanted me to Home Depot. And he later told me that the reason that they changed their mind because they didn't want to get caught on camera. But they ended up getting caught on camera anyway because we were in the alley, and I was showing them, the evidence there and where it's believed that the underground home is that's located in my backyard. Okay. On July 2nd, 2019, I met with Homeland and I showed them where I believe the tunnel was at, which was used for the 2010 oil show parties. I believe that we'll find out this tunnel was used to transport the murdered body of the young girl who they killed who somebody killed when she refused to prostitute at that party. My friend Angie McGee Hurley is her new name, was at those parties, but she was afraid to report this murder and told me high-level police were there. And Angie was leaving my home. Here's where I live. And driving to the party, she was there in 5 minutes. I actually believe she drove around, parked at Home Depot, went underground in the store, and come back. And you can see where the ground's cut behind Home Depot. This is a Google Earth map. When you go back in time to 6/16/2011, is when this map is, and that's what I was showing Homeland. You can see where the tunnels, it's going directly at my house. And and here is one guy that says, I used to live in your house. Oh yeah, he says, me and my brother used to go in the tunnels under it. That's one of many people that are documented saying tunnels and underground homes are here. Another woman's, I recorded her on the phone telling me there was 4 3-bedroom homes, 25 foot deep, each costing over $1 million a piece. She said they were having pedophile parties down there. Another woman from Houston, Layla O'Brien, she said, I worked on that project. She was a CAD programmer. She told me it was finished in 1987 at a cost of $7.35 million. And she believed the Bushes were connected to it. And back in the 80s, Bush Sr. was vice president. Midland, Texas is the hometown of the Bushes. Here in my backyard, when you look at Google Maps, even today, on the map screen, it shows a large home facility building in my backyard that can't be seen from above ground. You can't see it here, but if you go to Google Maps and look up my address behind the Home Depot, 3802 Fair Circle, you'll see there's a large building. And obviously, that's one of them underground homes that multiple people said here. And then there was even a recent candidate for sheriff. I was telling him this story, and he tells me that our past sheriff, Gary Painter, used to hang out down there. He said that was Painter's hideout. That's what he said. I was secretly recording that phone call, and so I posted it. It's a YouTube video right now. So sheriff candidate Joe Lozano confirmed these underground homes were here. That's where it's believed these oil show parties were going on. And I believe what was happening is the people at the oil show parties were parking in front of Home Depot, going underground there, in that building somewhere, and then this tunnel. And that's what I showed Homeland Security that day, okay, going directly towards my house. Here's the underground facility. Of course, I'm shot by somebody under my home in 2012, 2 weeks after I reported a suspected tunnel to the DEA. This story's not about that. Okay. On July 2nd, 2019, I met Homeland Security Agent Paul at the Home Depot store, and I showed them where I believe the tunnels were at, which were used for the 2010 oil show parties. I believe that we'll find out this tunnel was used to transport the murdered body of the young girl who they killed when she refused to prostitute. I think I've just read that and showed that. I'm doubling up on you. Okay. The next one is, these are text messages between myself and Homeland Security Agent Paul after I showed them where I believe the human trafficking murder tunnel was located at. As you can see, he admits to asking me why I won't sell my home and confirms this conversation was recorded. Okay, this was after, same day, July 2nd, 2019, after I met Homeland at the Home Depot store and showed them where I believe the tunnels are at. And this was earlier that day. We'll be heading there shortly. They're talking about the Home Depot. That sounds good. We're leaving right now. We're in the parking lot of the Home Depot in the white Ford Explorer, black Ford F-150. That's Paul with Homeland is writing me and telling me that. Okay, so later that night, I wrote him a message here. I sent him a link to a video called "Decided to Sell My Home" because he asked me why. I don't understand why you don't sell your home if you're living under the threat of death. And that caught me off guard, and I had to explain the Hobbs Act to him. Is that corrupt law enforcement can't work with criminals to terrorize homeowners into selling their property. And then his reply was, "Buddy, let's get something clear. I was not trying to talk you into selling your home today. I simply asked you why you wouldn't consider selling your home if you continue to feel threatened in there." And I had already provided them copies of the death threats I had, proof of the murder attempt that I survived. My life is definitely threatened. And then remember, our conversation was recorded, and that's real interesting right there, because I'd love for the public to hear that conversation where I explained the Hobbs Act to him. And a good analogy, and I've said this before, imagine that the bank has a bank robbery, and they call the police, and the police show up to the bank, and they go, "I don't understand why you don't sell this bank if you got people breaking into it." What are you talking about? How dare you, a law enforcement officer, ask me about selling my house when I'm providing evidence to these criminals? Because if you arrest these criminals, then I don't have to move. Nobody has to move. We can all live safe in our homes because we got killers breaking into homes. Anyway, that's the Homeland Security, and that's the right from my phone, the text messages from that day. 2 weeks later, July 19th, after showing DHS where I believe the human trafficking murder tunnels were located at, the ground was dug up and concrete was poured. I got that on video, you know, and I mean, it's just so amazing here.
See the infamous trees. But anyways,
I'm gonna show you here.
While I'm here, I think I'll take a picture here. This is where they're doing the concrete work, and you can see them out there. There's the concrete truck. And see, I was just there 2 weeks ago with the Homeland Security Agent, showing them where I suspected a tunnel entry.
Right. Can you even imagine that? 2 weeks after I showed them where I believe that tunnel was going on that was used for the Osho parties, was used to transport the body of a murdered little girl that wouldn't prostitute at. And, you know, Homeland is supposed to stop, you know, human trafficking, not help it and cover up for them. On July 30th, and remember that's the July 19th, July 30th, 2019, U.S. Congressman Mike Conaway, who's from Midland, announces his retirement. Come to find out, his late brother-in-law used to live across the street from my home and the underground home where the oil show parties were held. And I'm going to show you this, okay? His name was John Lejeune. He lived at 3809 Fair Circle across the street from my house. I live in a small cul-de-sac on Fair Circle. And so this is Suzanne Conaway's late brother right here, John Lejeune. And so, you know, here's the obituary. He died in 2008, right before I transferred to Midland, you know, as a 25-year company man and bought this home after the last homeowner died, okay? And some of the things that I'm looking at here is... here's the deed history for the current owner of that home right here, okay? William Wilson owns it. But here's John Lejeune, and so he sold it in 04, okay, to John David Ward, and John David Ward sold it in 08 to Daniel Price. Well, see, I have this line. Daniel Price was married to Brandy Merrill. She owned my home. This is my home up here. Okay, so when I moved in, Daniel Price and Brandy Merrill lived in this, what I call the Conaway home, okay, across the street. They sold it to this Cody Prindle in 2014, and then it was sold, or is it here on April 2014, to William Wilson. And I was wondering if William Wilson's not related to Marsu Wilson, who's related to Suzanne Conaway, if that home is still in the family. Wouldn't that be interesting? If, you know, and does this home have one of the tunnels going to it? Is it connected with the underground facilities? You know, was John Lejeune connected with you know, with these underground parties and etc. Okay. On October 11, 2019, Secretary of Homeland Security Kevin McAleenan resigned, and on October 17th, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry resigned. People were asking if it was because they were involved in trying to cover up the capital murder of the young girl at the 2010 oil show, underground oil show party. And I'm going to show you that, okay? So the reason that Wolf got that job is because Kevin McAleenan resigned in October. He got the job in November is what that article says, okay? And so he just mysteriously resigns 3 months after concrete's poured. I mean, I bet the concrete ain't even cured yet. And then 6 days later, Rick Perry, Secretary of Energy, resigns. And you can see the link between oil show parties and the Secretary of Energy. Because I'm sure that it wouldn't be good for the stock price for oil companies if it's found out they got a secret underground home where they were having parties during the oil show and this little girl was murdered that wouldn't prostitute. I'm sure the oil companies wouldn't want nobody to find that out. And they might just lean on the Energy Secretary. And interesting, Rick Perry was governor of Texas when the oil show parties were going on. He was governor of Texas when I was ambushed and shot in my home in 2012. And then Trump chose him as the Secretary of Energy. Okay, in October 2010, and this is backtracking, okay, my friend Angie Mungia Hurley, I just recently released her name, okay, and told me about a young girl that was murdered at a party going on during the week of the Permian Basin International Oil Show. She was afraid to report this murder and told me that high-level police were there. And what happened at the time was I'm trying to get her to report this, and then I get a call from a Midland police officer threatens to arrest me if I talk to Angie again. So I haven't talked to her since 2010. And then I tried to go report that murder as myself. I drove to the police station myself, you know, and then I got the number of a guy that would never call me back. They blew me off. In 2013, okay, and that was October 2010, in 2013, the remains of a 14 to 21-year-old girl were found outside of Midland. Obviously, this is the same girl, and she was transported in the tunnel that DHS had filled up with concrete 2 weeks after I showed them where it was at, okay? And that's all speculation, but it's all making sense that that's what's going on here, you know? And so I think, you know, as I said earlier, I think that deserves a legitimate investigation. Unidentified human remains were discovered outside of Midland, 10 miles south. Here's the address, right? The remains were determined to be a female, most likely being white or Hispanic, 14 to 21 years old at the time of death, and homicide suspected. Now keep in mind that my friend Angie told me about a young girl that was murdered, and I tried to get her reported, and she's afraid and said high-level police were there. Maybe some Homeland Security people were there. Okay. And you know, and I just went to the internet and found that Homeland Security, the reason I contacted Homeland Security is because they're supposed to take care of human trafficking. And that's human trafficking right there. When it forced prostitution, sex slavery, you know, telling this little girl that you know, you're going to prostitute or die, you know, they gave her a choice. Well, you know, that's what I expect Homeland Security to be taking care of. I don't expect them to be pouring concrete and covering up for the murder of little girls that won't prostitute. And so there's some very serious questions here. Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas.